Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, welcome to the Terje Rod-Larsen Center in IPI, and good afternoon to all of you. When people think of energy resources in the Gulf, they usually think about oil and gas. But our guest today is leading the way in changing that perception. Through his work in the private sector as Chief Executive Officer of Masdar and as the UAE's Special Envoy for Energy and Climate Change, Dr. Sultan Jaber is showing that renewable energy has a viable future. Dr. Al Jaber is no stranger to the UN. He has served on the Secretary General's High-Level Group on Sustainable Energy for All and as a member of the Secretary General's Advisory Group on Energy and Climate Change. He brings to his work the credibility of leading one of the world's most innovative renewable energy companies, namely Masdar, which is based in Abu Dhabi. Masdar is demonstrating that renewable energy is not only good for our planet, it can be commercially viable. What was once considered futuristic, maybe even fanciful, is becoming reality. And the most amazing manifestation of this is Masdar City, a planned city powered by renewable energy. If I might put it that way, science fiction has become fact in Abu Dhabi. Abu Dhabi is also home to the International Renewable Energy Agency, IRENA, and is the host of the annual World Future Energy Forum, which I actually had the pleasure of participating in over the three last years. Indeed, Sultan, it is my great pleasure to have this opportunity to go with reciprocity and to come back to you thinking about the warm hospitality you gave me when I was in your country. I would like to make this an interactive discussion, so if you'll allow me, I will ask a series of questions to get us started and then open up the discussion to the audience. And I also know that Sultan is a man of dialogue, so if you want to interrupt me when I'm asking questions, you are fully welcome to do it. Let me begin with a broad question. Why is a region which is so fundamentally associated with oil and gas, why is it now diversifying its energy mix?
Assalamu alaikum. Terry, allow me first to start by saying thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. It is indeed a great pleasure to be here at the heart of this very important institution and to be exposed to such esteemed audience. In fact, yes, I do want this session to be as interactive as possible, so please do engage and do ask questions whenever you have a question. The question you just asked me, in fact, a question that has been coming up a lot. And the question, just to remind everyone, is simply why would the United Arab Emirates, Abu Dhabi in particular, as a major oil-producing nation, proactively seek a key role in the renewable energy space and be proactive in terms of helping mitigate climate change and facilitate processes that could, in somebody's views, act as a threat to oil and gas. Now, there is a short answer and there is a long answer. The short answer is that we can and we should. The long answer is as follows. We, as a major oil-producing nation, have earned a position in the global energy markets. Us being leaders in the global energy markets entails a responsibility. Our leadership has instilled environmental stewardship and environmental sustainability across all of our activities. Sustainability is an integral part of our economy. The UAE today possesses the 5th largest oil reserve in the world with 98 billion barrels of reserves. The 7th largest gas reserve with around 214 trillion cubic feet of gas reserves. So to us, it is not a question of us being able to meet our immediate energy requirements. It is in fact much more than that. We proactively engaged in the global discussion around climate change and advancing renewable energy because we simply feel that we have a role to play. And this role will only provide us with a win-win scenario, given that we engage, and we engage in a serious manner, capitalizing on our deep energy expertise, as well as capitalizing and tapping into the substantial financial resources that we have access to through our reserves in terms of oil and gas. So for a major oil-producing nation to proactively invest in advancing the technologies of renewable energy and sustainability, we find it to be a natural step. We find it to be a logical action, and we find it to be an activity that just makes perfect sense. If we were to truly capitalize on our networks, relationships, partnerships, and how oil and gas have helped build our own economies, we will definitely ensure that we extend our reach as far as our energy expertise is concerned to the globe, to the whole world, in a way that is sustainable and in a way that supports the world meet its energy requirements. Abu Dhabi has a rich history and a very robust track record in terms of extending our reach and in terms of supplying the world with energy through barrels of oil or through gas. Today, I am very comfortable to tell you that Abu Dhabi doesn't only help meet the global energy requirements through oil and gas. In fact, we do that also through clean power, through clean energy. And we do that through knowledge transfer, through investing in clean technologies that we are helping commercialize, and through projects that we already have fully commissioned on the ground. A good example are our projects in Spain. We are today owners of 3 solar power plants in Spain. We are partners with Dong and E.ON in the largest offshore wind farm in the UK. We are developing the largest CSP technology, concentrated solar power technology in Abu Dhabi. It's a 100 megawatt solar thermal power plant. So we are already extending knowledge, sharing our knowledge, extending energy through intellectual property and through clean electrons that are coming out of our power plants in Spain or in the UK or in Abu Dhabi. If we look at the solar industry today, Masdar, a company wholly owned by Abu Dhabi government, owns about 12% of the solar share in the world, and we're only 5 years old. How did we do it? Was it difficult? Yes. But how did we do it? We simply did it because we had a great deal of commitment and a great deal of dedication and support from a very visionary leadership. Can others do it? Absolutely. It can be done, given that they commit the resources, given that they dedicate the financials required, as well as the regulatory frameworks that are needed, given that they also provide the infrastructure that will help accelerate the development and the deployment of renewable energy. In short, we in Abu Dhabi have been acting as a responsible energy player. Through Masdar and its activities, will no longer be an energy player through only exporting oil and gas, but we will be exporting knowledge, energy, and become a true energy supplier to the world. I hope I answered your question.
I think you painted a very interesting picture on the basis of my question. But since you are now at a center for peace, security, and development, may I ask you, do you see any implications for security in the region, trade in the region, and development in the region on the basis of the map you just gave us over the terrain?
Absolutely. I think energy is very much interlinked and interconnected with security and peace. I think history proves that conflicts were caused by the need of meeting global requirements. Energy is the spinal cord of any economy in the world. Without energy, without the oil and gas sector that we capitalized on in our own country, we wouldn't be who we are today. And the same applies on any other country. We also know global population is growing. Economies are growing. Climate change is a reality. What do we do in such a situation and dealing with such circumstance? We know that oil and gas will continue to play an important role, yet we know that oil and gas resources are depleting. We know that renewable energy today is not as mature as we want it to be, yet it's mature enough, given that we take what we have today and put a roadmap of how are we going to scale it up and mature it to a point where it can seriously complement and supplement the conventional source of power. Nuclear power, nuclear energy, in our view, is an important player as part of the energy mix. It can act as the catalyst. It can act as the transition conduit. It can act as the bridge between economies that are very much dependent on hydrocarbons to economies that are very much dependent on clean technologies over time. So energy is a very critical subject. It should always stay very high on the global agenda. And in order for us to ensure economic development, and in order for us to ensure our own prosperity, and us being able to cater for our country's developments and our country's growth, energy is one topic that we have to be very focused on in a way that is responsible and in a way that will adopt the energy mix approach without depending on only one source of energy. One source of energy is no longer going to be the name of the game moving forward. Energy is becoming much more expensive. Energy sources are becoming much more precious. So how do we deal with all these circumstances? To avoid, in a preventive manner, to avoid any future conflicts, we need to think ahead of ourselves. We need to diversify our energy sources. We need to help mitigate climate change and its threats. And we need to seriously advance the research and the technological requirements of the renewable energy sector.
So one of the implications of what you are saying is that, in a way, oil has become and will become a less pivotal factor in relation to the strategic significance of the region.
What I am saying is that oil and gas will continue to play a major role in our own economic development plans, as well as meeting our own population growth requirements. So, and we have good examples today in the region. Oil is a very precious commodity. It is not always going to only be export-oriented. Oil might be needed to meet our own requirements. So that mix has to be, and of course, there isn't one-size-fits-all solution. Each country with its own geographies and demographics will require its own custom-tailored approach, whereby we can decide how much oil is needed to meet our energy requirements, how much gas is required, how much renewable can be applied, and how much nuclear can be applied. So what I'm saying is that oil will continue to be precious, oil will continue to be a very important commodity, but the utilization of oil moving forward might slightly change.
Let me move to a slightly different subject. As we all know, the Rio +20 conference on sustainable development took place just a few weeks ago. As you see it, were any steps taken there which has implications for renewable energy as a way of enhancing both energy security and sustainable development? What are your impressions?
Again, Rio was a very important milestone. It was a platform where serious issues were discussed. In fact, I also found it to be a good meeting point to help get more clarity on the package delivered in Durban in South Africa at the COP17 meeting in preparation or laying the groundwork required for the COP18, which will take place in Doha, Qatar. One of the very important outcomes of Rio was the Sustainable Development Goals. We very much support it. We very much believe in it. Now, what's really needed is to put a framework around it, get clarity of what this means, what are the objectives, what are the action plans required, and over what timeline. So, as far as I'm concerned, Rio was somewhat a success in terms of laying the groundwork, outlining what's required to move forward, yet a lot of work is still required. We need to collectively work together under this multilateral process, and we need to carefully realize that time is not in our favor. We don't have much time for misunderstandings, and we don't have much time for miscommunications or misalignments. We need to seriously work in terms of coming out with a very clear, robust outcome out of these platforms and out of these discussions in a way that is in a form that can be communicated to the rest of the world and that is meaningful with clear actions and with clear responsibilities.
Then one last question before I open the floor. I know that you are a very strong advocate of public-private partnerships. What incentives are there actually for private companies to and governments to invest in renewable energy? And an additional question, is it really so clean and green as some people say? And can it be, most importantly here, be profitable?
Yes. Well, renewable energy is in fact the cleanest source of power, simply because it emits zero carbon emissions. We also consider nuclear energy to be clean power, as opposed to other sources. Now, in our case, for example, in Abu Dhabi, we consider our gas industry very clean as well, and this might raise a question. The reason why we consider our gas industry very clean is simply because we emit zero gas from our gas operations. Back in 1979, the wise leadership of His Highness, of the late father, Sheikh Zayed bin Sultan Al Nahyan, the founding father of the United Arab Emirates, instituted a zero gas flaring policy, which has been fundamental in transforming the industry and us seriously practicing what we preach in terms of our environmental stewardship and environmental sustainability. So renewable energy out of the total energy mix today, yes, it is in fact the cleanest source of power. Is it profitable? It very much depends on what regulatory framework are you adopting or are you embedding yourself within. Now, in our case, for example, it is profitable. We did not use any of the existing regulatory frameworks, either the feed-in tariff law or the ROC system that is being implemented in the UK. Each country has its own policy framework as well as its own regulations. So there isn't one policy that will provide an incentive to private sector investments into the renewable energy sector. Each country should customize its own approach with a regulatory framework that supports the attraction of private sector investment. The way we looked at it in Abu Dhabi is a very interesting model, and I actually urge and encourage major oil-producing nations to adopt a similar approach. We have access to energy sources, unlike many others. We have access to ample sources of energy. And that puts us at an advantage. It gives us cheaper access. And we can capitalize on cheap access of ample energy sources by quickly advancing renewable energy, even if it's a little expensive today. But the way we look at it, we cannot compare the cost per kilowatt hour coming out of renewables with the cost of kilowatt hour coming out of oil and gas. I think we should include it all as part of an energy mix, and our cost per kilowatt hour should be the average cost from combining both production portfolios. That is what makes the kilowatt hour produced very competitive with the international market today. And this is what we did, and that's why you see us seriously advancing by deploying real technology on the ground. The first question was, if you can just remind me.
I mean, what steps do you think will be taken after Rio Plus 20 related to sustainable development and energy security?
In fact, I have to commend here the steps taken by the Secretary General. I think we very much we have to appreciate his efforts and his dedication to this whole process. This past January in Abu Dhabi, he launched the Sustainable Energy for All initiative, which has been a great success for all the participants in terms of what framework came out of it, and the fact that a secretariat is being established right now to manage all the outcomes and the products that came out of this process. Sustainable Energy for All initiative did also show a very unique capability during the Rio summit, as well as their instrumental role in acting as a catalyst in bringing in whether public sector or private sector. And that is what's very much needed. We are so desperate to see, on a global level, public and private sector work together as far as this sector is concerned.
Thank you for speaking, I would say, as always, with such clarity and giving us such a comprehensive and detailed image of a very challenging field in international affairs. I will now open the floor. You can ask any questions you want related to the topic to our guest here. I see a hand in the back there. Shall we start there? If you could give that gentleman a microphone. If you could please say your name and your affiliation, I would appreciate.
Hi, my name is Mark Kember. I'm from the Climate Group. Good afternoon. As you know, Dr. Jaber, I'm a big fan of the work that you've done. I've got two questions. One is, if you were talking to other major oil and gas producers who haven't done what you've done, what are the lessons they need to know? How can we encourage other countries to do the same things? What do they need to know to be able to do what you've done? Second question was around, you talk about a mix of energy going forward. It would seem to me that with robust development of renewable energy in your country, you could then be thinking about electric vehicles and electrification of a whole range of services that would otherwise be provided by gas or oil. And you could be getting to a point where actually you don't end up exhausting all the reserves you have, and other countries likewise. That seems slightly at odds with what you were saying, or perhaps I've misunderstood, but it seems that would be a laudable aim to be going for.
Yes. Well, I'm glad you raised this question because it deserves some clarification. As far as the oil-producing nations, I must say that in the beginning of the lifetime of the Masdar story, we faced some difficulty by some of the nations, thinking that we are promoting a new source of energy that could potentially become a threat to renewable energy. Where in fact, all along, we never saw renewable energy acting as a threat. In fact, we find it to be a factor that will help us extend the lifetime of our hydrocarbon resources, that will help us over time to help and facilitate, produce more technologies, even for the oil and gas sector, that are environmentally friendly. And at the same time, we saw that it is in fact a responsibility that lies on the shoulders of the oil-producing nations. They can reinvest, and they should reinvest some of their returns into oil and gas and into advancing renewable energy. It is just a natural step. It is just a logical move from on their part. Now, if you look at what Masdar did over the past few years, it adopting this very unique structure, addressing the whole value chain of renewable energy and sustainability in a comprehensive manner, in a very progressive way, in a dynamic, flexible, agile manner, to be able to respond to market dynamics and to economic situations. Based on that experience, we have witnessed a serious shift, mainly in the oil-producing nations. And I am proud to say that one of the very good examples of nations seriously reviewing their energy structure and how they produce and consume energy is the model of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. The recent announcement made by our friends and colleagues in Saudi Arabia, I believe, is a true transformational moment. For the kingdom to take such a step, announcing such targets for renewable energy, I think provides some serious hope for the industry and for the whole sector. And we appreciate, of course, their efforts and them seriously engaging in advancing the sector. I think it has a great promise for the whole industry and for helping develop new areas in our region. Now, the way we looked at the sector in Abu Dhabi, like I said, holistic approach, very comprehensive, very progressive. We cover the whole value chain, from research, from education, investing in human capital, investing in clean technology companies throughout the different growth stages, deploying large-scale technologies like our projects in Spain, UK, and in Abu Dhabi and elsewhere. And of course, Masdar City, that acts as the living laboratory. It's the home that attracts everyone together, rub shoulders against each other, generate ideas, and help accelerate the development and deployment of such technologies. This model now has become a blueprint, and this is what's being seriously evaluated and considered by many nations and by many governments around the world.
Yes. No, I can see many hands here. I think I will collect a few questions. The gentleman on the front row here. Please state your name and affiliation.
Warren Hogue, IPI. Dr. Al Jaber, 2 years ago I was in Abu Dhabi, and I remember very well being in an office there, and a gentleman came in, and he had just come from the city that was under construction. And maybe Terje saw that image also, because the word futuristic was the word that occurred to me when I saw it. And I wanted to ask you, can you describe for this audience what that city looks like, how it actually operates with the monorails, the fact that there seems to be a very minimal, if any, carbon footprint, and also at what state of construction is it?
I think that's such an interesting question that I think I will go straight back to you, Sultan.
Yeah. That is a very interesting question, but let me address it in a little bit of more detail. In order for us to be able to meet our energy requirements, on a global level I'm talking right now, and at the same time help mitigate the threats of climate change, and adopt a sustainable approach in the way we conduct business, a number of factors come to mind. Urban planning and the sustainability of our built environment is one area that has been neglected for a very long time. And that was very much evident when we went on our own fact-finding mission before we launched Masdar, to better understand and realize where does this industry stand? What is the status of this industry? What were the hurdles that did not allow the industry to flourish or to prosper or to progress? And we came to realize a number of things. Among those is one, the technology of renewable energy is not way too immature like we all thought. Renewable energy is mature enough. Its problem, though, the fragmentation that's taking place within the sector. Technologies are being researched and developed and deployed in silos, not in an interconnected way, not in an integrated manner. And that makes it a big challenge. The other lesson learned was urban planning was never high on the agenda as far as our energy landscape is concerned. If we were only a bit more efficient in how we plan our cities and what building codes we apply, we would save a lot of energy. So when we came back with the concept of Masdar City, we realized that doing it the conventional way will not be the solution. So we raised the bar very high. We said this is going to be our call for action. We want these hidden technologies hiding in some lab in Silicon Valley or elsewhere around the world to pop up and to come for it to be tested and deployed. And that's why I refer to Masdar City as the living laboratory. It is a true experimental destination where technologies are being researched at the Masdar Institute in partnership with MIT, where technologies are being piloted, deployed, demonstrated, and commercialized. So it has been a great experience. We've captured a lot of knowledge since we incepted the concept of Masdar City. Wealth of knowledge have been created. Long lists of lessons learned are being captured every day. But let me tell you where we are today. From the buildings that we have already deployed or constructed on site, we are already leading the way. And why do I say that? You will find the first deployment of a driverless car. First deployment. You won't find it anywhere else at this scale. The personal rapid transit, I'm referring to the personal rapid transit, which picks up our people, whether students, employees, people working within the city, or researchers working at the university, or faculty from the parking lot, and drives them all the way to their ultimate destination. No driver, fully automated, electrically powered. Where do we get the power from? We built our own captive power source, a 10 megawatt photovoltaic facility that feeds us with the power required for our own buildings, as well as it's a feeder for our construction phase. So all of our power is clear, is clean. In other words, we practice what we preach from day one. We did not say we're going to be dependent on a conventional source of power until we are up and running. We said no. From day one, even during our construction phase, we only use clean power. And that's why we built our own captive solution. We have a 10 megawatt already up and running, and it's been up and running for about 3.5 years now, providing us with the power needed for our offices and the university campus, as well as the other buildings, and the construction phase of Masdar City. We adopted a very unique approach in terms of our urban planning that ensures energy efficiency. We can't be talking only about meeting our energy requirements through generation and more generation and more generation. Before we start talking about generation, our focus mainly should be on conservation and efficiency from what we already have. That is step one. Saving a kilowatt hour is much easier and much cheaper than producing a kilowatt hour. So that has been our focus throughout the master plan and the architectural designs of Masdar City. The buildings we have up and running today at Masdar City, and it's evident and very much proven that they're the most sustainable buildings. They consume 54% less water than any other building of the same size. And they consume 51% less energy than any other building of the same size. And of course, that helped in a big way us being carbon neutral as we progress Masdar city. Today, I can comfortably tell you that we are very much carbon neutral because the power we produce on site is much larger than our own consumption on site. So the excess of power we produce on site, we inject into the national grid of Abu Dhabi. I believe what has been demonstrated already on site at Masdar city is one of a kind. It's the first attempt in the whole world. It was a challenge and it was complex and it will continue to be so. But with the commitment and the support we have from our very wise leadership, we have no doubt that we are going to achieve our very aggressive, ambitious goals.
Isn't that fascinating? There is a saying, seeing is believing. I've actually been there, and it is science fiction become fact. It's incredible. I saw several other hands. The lady on the second row there, and I'll come back to you.
President of NGO Sustainability. We have a real crisis situation in the United States because of cheap natural gas. Of course, there's the problem of the technology used for fracking. I don't know if you know of any up-to-date research in this area, but certainly we need that kind of research to be able to extract it without polluting water, etc. But the most important thing, it seems to me, is that the cheap price of natural gas is undermining all the efforts in renewable energy in the United States. And this is a real crisis situation here. And do you see any solutions?
In fact, I'm surprised you call it a crisis because I see an opportunity all over it. Whether it's the US or any other country that has access to ample sources of energy that are cheap, they are at an advantage. They are absolutely at an advantage to take the lead on advancing renewable energy in terms of research and in terms of testing out technologies and in terms of advancing at a large scale. Even though it's expensive today, again, if we go back to the energy mix concept and we only evaluate the electricity cost, taking the average cost per kilowatt hour by combining the conventional sources of power with the renewable sources of power, the impact on the average cost per kilowatt hour is going to be almost negligible. The consumers or the payers will not even notice the difference. But that, of course, study has to be done. This research has to be conducted. And like I said, every country should create its own policy that caters for its own needs and that caters for its own natural resources and the energy requirements they need from renewable energy. So in fact, I really would like us to be a bit more positive and don't refer to it as a crisis. Capitalize on what we have. We have a huge opportunity ahead of us. It can act as a true... We can seriously reform economies by focusing our attention on advancing renewable energy. It will provide you, it can act as a new economic development program that will have a direct impact on your GDP by creating jobs, by attracting industry, attracting foreign direct investment, advancing the research that is collecting dust in many of the labs today. So it's just a matter of a regulatory framework that will support the incubation and the advancement of such sector. And if I look at the resources available in the US, I think what you have in the US is remarkable, is impressive. In many areas around the world, in order for them to seriously engage in a very sophisticated, complex sector like renewable energy, they will have to invest for years to get to a point where the US is today. You've got the best academic institutions, you've got the best research facilities and research institutions, You've got frameworks that have already helped the US become a technology leader in a number of sectors. And you've got the talent, and you've got the financial resources, and you've got the energy expertise. You have the ecosystem required. It's just a matter of goodwill, real commitment, dedication, and focus.
Thank you for that passionate intervention. Shall we then move? There's a gentleman there who raises his hand. If you could be so kind to give him the microphone.
Thank you very much. My name is Abdullah Njai, and I work for the United Nations Office for Project Services. I want to thank the presenter first for the sharing this very interesting experience. And it takes me back, I hope this won't reflect my age, to 30 years ago when I did my first engineering degree, because I was lucky to be to did my first engineering degree in Burkina Faso in West Africa, in one of the schools, institutes that was engaged first in research on renewable energy, mainly solar voltaic, cook stoves, and so forth. And I can relate very much to what you said, that the technical maturity has been there for a while, for decades, because they were already back then, in the late 70s, early 80s, that there was really no technological secret. So the big question is still, even after 30, 40 years nearly, if you especially focus on countries where, I appreciate, by the way, very much, your experience in your country, in Spain, in the UK, but of course, the big concern when you come to population growth, access to a lot of goods and services, including energy for all and so forth. Of course, the big gap is in Africa, in Asia, Latin America, maybe to some degree. So coming back to Africa again, I find it always, as an African, excuse me for putting it this way, contradictory that there's been already experience so interesting 30, 40 years ago that show that technologically it is possible, but somehow we still cannot make any real progress beside a few pilot cases here and there. Based on your experience, how did you identify, well, you mentioned how you identify some barriers, but what lessons can we learn in other parts of the world to really scale up to get to the level where you were able to get at in these other countries? Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I do agree. Africa represents a great deal of opportunities as far as renewable energy is concerned. Plus, Africa does have access to very rich renewable energy, natural resources, whether it's sun, and in some instances wind, and in some areas even biofuel can be very much considered. Now, it all boils down to, again, regulatory frameworks and policies. If in Africa, for example, there was the right regulatory framework that supports the attraction of foreign direct investment with the right tariff structure, I don't see why would any investor wouldn't consider investing in Africa. We would. We as Masdar, as an investment vehicle, investing in renewable energy assets all over the world, we would very much welcome the opportunity to explore investments in Africa. Of course, given that those opportunities are supported with the right natural resources, as well as the right regulatory framework and policy, and us being able to guarantee our investments. But without such framework in place, we will continue to have difficulty in the widespread adoption of renewable energy, and especially in places like Africa. And I believe there are multilateral institutions in the world today that can help bridge that gap as far as cost is concerned. It's just a matter of bringing it high on the agenda and adopting a different approach to it, realizing that Africa can, in fact, act as a true catalyst for the advancement of renewable energy. Thank you.
Thank you once again. There is a hand at the very back of the room. Can we provide a microphone?
I'm sorry. I just remembered, and it's again in regards to the last question in regards to Africa. just to prove a point that we do seriously believe in the potential of Africa and its role, and the role that Africa can play in advancing the sector. I'm sure most of you know the International Renewable Energy Agency. It's an agency dedicated to the widespread adoption of renewable energy through policies and knowledge sharing and ensuring cooperation between nations and institutions. Abu Dhabi, through the Abu Dhabi Fund for Development, committed $350 million to the International Renewable Energy Agency to help the dissemination and the widespread deployment of renewable energy in the developing countries. So this is again one way of us showing commitment to our fellow African countries, as well as our commitment to the sector itself. So we provided the incentive, the bridge that will help deploy such technologies in Africa. And we will soon, hopefully, start seeing projects either in terms of capacity building or technology deployments in the African countries that are members of the International Renewable Energy Agency. I'm sorry.
No problem.
I just felt that I had to clarify that point as well.
I think it was an important point to clarify. Thank you very much. My name is Florian Reber. I'm a grad student at Columbia University. And thank you very much for this rich presentation and discussion. I tried to be brief, but maybe that gives me the chance to ask you two questions. First, in terms of getting renewables to scale, what role do you see for fossil fuel subsidies reform? I know it's a complicated and difficult issues, but what might be some early first steps to take that some countries maybe already take? And my second question relates to the fact that we have this year-long experience with a rather slow-moving international process, but in more recent years, experiences such as Masdar, where from the bottom up, there's a lot of fast movement happening, a lot of experiences of actually how we can meet the challenge of a clean tech revolution.
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to interrupt you. Can you please come a bit forward?
Oh, sorry.
I'm not sure about the rest, but I'm having a hard time.
Okay. So my first question was with regards to the role of fossil fuel subsidies to get clean tech to scale, or renewables to scale, and what some early first steps might be that are actually also practically feasible in economic and political terms. And my second question relates to the fact there is a rather slow-moving international process. It is moving.
Can we answer the first question first? Can we answer the first question? I think throughout the discussion so far, I have emphasized the important role that major oil-producing nations can play in helping advance the renewable energy technologies. I don't think it's a debate about leaving off the subsidies on hydrocarbons or not, because to be honest with you, I really don't see much impact. On the contrary, I see that by having access to cheap resources from conventional sources is in fact a much better platform, and it puts you at an advantage position to advance renewable energy that are somewhat expensive today. But again, if you adopt the energy mix approach with cheap sources from conventional sources, expensive somewhat from renewables, combining them together, the average cost per kilowatt hour becomes very cheap. And I think this is the way that we should always look at the cost per kilowatt hour if we were to seriously advance the scale of renewable energy technologies by capitalizing on the existing, accessible, cheap resources of conventional power. I think that answered the question.
Yes.
Good.
Can we get the second one?
Yeah, sure. So very quickly, Masdar is such a brilliant example of really what's happening on the ground. A terrific initiative, I think. Lots of learnings for other countries and businesses from your experience. So my point is there is so much happening all over the world on the ground, businesses, private-public partnerships, governments that actually adopt plans, maybe on a subnational level. The international level is moving very slowly in contrast to that. So linking this slow top-down and rather fast-moving bottom-up approach on the international process with multilateral negotiations, do you see how do you see opportunities to strengthen this link via the COP process? Okay.
Thank you for your very good question. The way I see renewable energies, the sector's advancement in comparison to diplomacy or to the processes that we have in place, I can comfortably tell you that I find renewable energy progress much faster than diplomacy today. So the technology, through the commitments of private sector and in some instances public institutions around the world, are progressing much faster than the political dialogue and the diplomacy platforms that have been created. Now, is this a sustainable scenario to the whole situation moving forward? I think this requires a serious visit. It is an important issue. We need to strengthen our multilateral platforms that have been created by the UN system and others, because we do have hope and we do have faith in the process. It is yet only needs to be a bit more clearer as far as what is the ultimate goal. What are we concerned with today? If you don't define the problem clearly that you're trying to solve, you will never get to an answer that you expect to have. So defining your objectives is priority number one. Once you define your objectives clearly, only then you can put or develop an action plan that will help you address those concerns or those objectives. And what cuts across it is responsibility, accountability, and a very important factor, which is time. Time is not in our favor. We have to rush into an understanding of what is in fact needed. What is it exactly that we're trying to sort out here? We cannot go and say we're going to solve every single problem under the sun, because we'll never do. We have to quantify what is it we want to do, be clear about it, and put solution. In any business or in any issue, it is always best to identify the low-hanging fruits. What are the quick wins that will help us position the sector in a big way all over the world? And what are the quick wins that will help us stick our flag in the ground by saying, these are examples like Masdar and some others around the world that can actually act as platforms, as conduits, as catalysts of helping advance, whether it's the technology or the finances required or the policies or even the human capital that is needed. If we don't have this in place, we will continue going in circles. And I am hopeful, and I do have faith in the current process, and I am confident that at some point soon we will see some great outcomes come out of this exercise. Thank you.
Shall we then move to, there is a gentleman in a suit there who raised his hand.
I hope you recognize me, Terje. Walter Kemp with IPI. You'd mentioned the possibility of renewables mitigating climate change. When you consider how many conflicts are caused by oil and gas, could you also perhaps suggest that renewables could mitigate the threat of war?
I think we talked about this a little earlier in terms of renewable energy being a platform for our future prosperity. Oil and gas alone will not be the source of energy that will meet our global energy requirements moving forward. We have to look for new sources, and we better off find sources that are clean, that will help us be more sustainable and more environmentally friendly as we progress, and that will help mitigate the threats of climate change. So in my view, renewable energy is a platform that will ensure prosperity and peace in the future.
And there is still time for a few more questions. So can those who want to take the floor now please raise their hand? There is one hand there.
Thank you very much. My name is Andreas Pfaffernoschke from the Permanent Mission of Germany to the United Nations. Minister, thank you very much for your thought-provoking remarks and statements. As we are in a UN context here, I hope I'm allowed to ask a question which is very much UN-related. You, Minister, you are a member of, or has been a member of the group, on the high-level group on sustainable energy for all of the Secretary General. You mentioned the initiative. You also mentioned the new structures which are going to be in place soon. On the other hand, we talked about IRENA. Your country is host country of IRENA. You are very active in IRENA. My question to you would be, how do you see the future relationship between the new structure, the Sustainable Energy for All initiative will be put forward on, and the role IRENA is going to play? Do you see the danger of a duplication of structures? Do you think the two are complementary? I would be interested in hearing your views on how these two institutions, the new Secretariat for the Sustainable Energy for All initiative on the one hand, and IRENA could play a fruitful role together in the future. Thank you.
In fact, we do see a role for the Sustainable Energy for All initiative to play. I am confident that there will be no duplication of efforts. We don't have time for duplication of efforts or misunderstandings or miscommunications or misaligned agendas represented through these different agencies or through these different organizations. And I must also convey that this is the feeling and the belief I come across from all the members at the high-level group, as well as from the senior leadership of IRENA. They do see the complementarity effect between this initiative and IRENA's needs moving forward. And in fact, I don't think that it's only IRENA and the Sustainable Energy for All as institutions that needs to cooperate. I think there are a number of institutions around the world that needs to clearly align with each other in order for them to help the serious movement and advancement of the sector. So just to be short, I don't see any potential conflicts. In fact, I support the establishment, and I will, at my own capacity, I will ensure that we capitalize on each other as much as possible in the best interest of the sector.
Thank you again. We are coming to a close. If there is one more question, I will take it. There is not. Let me then say that I think we are all very lucky to be here in the Trygve Lie Center this afternoon, because we've had the pleasure and the opportunity to be together with one of the most innovative, energetic, as you have seen, and I do not hesitate to say revolutionary social and business entrepreneurs of our day. It's been a privilege. It's been an honor. And I wish there were more people like you on the planet, because you give us hope for the future of this planet. I was sitting thinking about it, that what you're actually talking about is that it gives us hope that our children and our children's children will live on a better planet than we live on today. You used the words, you said you didn't see a crisis, you saw opportunities. And I think this is the core of what is driving you forward. And I've seen it in many fields, how you refuses to be bogged down by problems, but look for the opportunities. And then you have, actually you defined the qualities yourself. You said what is needed is goodwill, energy, commitment, and focus. And that's you.
Thank you.
So shall we give him a big hand and wish him good luck?
Thank you, Terje. Thank you, Terje.
And thank you all.
Thank you.